Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Agencies Talk. This is Digital Marketer's weekly talk show where we sit down with agency professionals. Today, we are so lucky to be joined by Billy Broas. Billy is a marketing consultant who specializes in messaging and copywriting. He left a career as an engineering consultant to run his beer brewing website full-time. He's been the behind-the-scenes brain to many successful entrepreneurs and businesses, including Digital Marketer's very own Ryan Deiss. Today's topic centers around Client Content Machine, a system for agencies to speed up content creation, boost client conversions, and have endless upsell opportunities. As a reminder, have fun and engage in the chat. If you have any questions, please put those down in the Q&A tool at the bottom so that we can make sure to get those answered for you. As always, we're joined by Mark de Grasse, president of Digital Marketer and host for today's Agencies Talk. So without further ado, Mark, please take it away.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Like the name implies, this is a talk. So if you have input, please share it. We do have the Q&A tool if you have a specific question that you'd like us to address, but feel free to raise your hand or just add it in the chat. We would like this to be as interactive as possible. Now we have Billy. Billy is fantastic. He's actually been helping us out a ton with our copywriting accelerator, which just ended. He actually ended up doing 2 sessions, which was fantastic. He presented the 5 Lightbulbs, which we'll discuss today. But get those copywriting questions set because it's going to be a good chat. So welcome, Billy.
Thank you, Mark. Hey, great to be back. I see some familiar faces here. Hey, Axel. Hey, Melina. Cool. Yeah, that was a fun copy accelerator. And yeah, excited to kind of switch gears and talk more about the agency consulting copywriting side of things, more the business side of things.
No, it's fantastic. The more actually going through the entire accelerator, I was like, man, you could have the basis of every single, campaign that you do be generated just from, the process of getting to your copywriting when you're trying to sell anything, and so I really is step number 1 when it comes to not just the ideation of what you're going to market, but really fleshing out every single concept that you have in that sense. So for marketing agencies, it's an enormous asset and, a service if you want to offer it like that, even though I think, and we'll talk about it, selling copywriting is not the easiest thing to do just because most people don't understand what it is. So to get started, what is copywriting in relation to the function of marketing agencies?
So there are a lot of definitions of copywriting. My favorite is it's salesmanship in print. And a lot of the people that I have historically worked with, they're not marketers first. They're not professional marketers. They're small business owners, a lot of subject matter experts. They often have very nerdy topics that are very helpful, very transformative when they're implemented by the clients. The trouble is getting those clients or customers in the first place. And kind of the curse of the expert, the Achilles heel of the expert is that they're so deep in the weeds of their topic that they forget what it's like back at the surface. And so they bring a lot of assumptions into their marketing, assuming that the person up here understands what life is like down here. And so I like to say that the final step in genius is going back up to the surface once you've understood what it's like down in the weeds, and then not dumbing it down, but simplifying it so you can translate it, communicate it at this level so people get it and they're like, oh man, I want that. And then you can bring them as deep as that person is willing to go. And copywriting is how you do that.
Love that. Well, and I love that kind of top-down approach because I think it is, once you get into a certain level of marketing, it's easy to forget that nobody understands anything with marketing. And so you do end up at that high level instead of, dropping it down to the super basics to help people understand, like, here's what marketing is. It's not just showing off your product and posting a few testimonials. There's a lot more to it. And if you use your approach, which we'll talk about, the 5 light bulbs, you could systematically walk through the experience and kind of understand your customer and get them to the place that you want them to go. So why don't we just start with kind of what is the 5 light bulbs that we've learned recently?
Yeah, so you hit on my backstory a little bit. I left the engineering world as a consultant, and because I had this entrepreneurial itch, and I wanted to leave and do my own thing. So I started selling these beer brewing courses online, and fortunately, after a number of years, I was able to leave that full-time job and do that. And then I really geeked out on the business and marketing side of things. And so I started to work with other people like me who had even bigger websites, bigger businesses, and all these different niches, selling online courses, coaching, consulting, author, speakers, the expert industry. That's who I have historically worked with. So they had great products, but they had trouble, like I said earlier, communicating the value of those products. And because I really geeked out on copywriting, I was able to look at what they were doing and say, hey, like, you're doing really well, you're really successful, but if we just say it like this, you're just going to catapult that success and reach a lot more people beyond just that inner circle who have been following you for 10 years and will buy anything you put out, right? Because that's a big problem that you all probably faced. It's like you have those people where you will launch anything and they will buy, but then it's like, okay, I exhausted that audience. How do I reach this person who doesn't know who the heck I am?
Hmm.
So I started to, did you want to comment on that? You probably been.
Oh yeah. Well, because that's so true, because you have that base audience, and the problem is, as a marketer and really just as a person, you get a bunch of compliments for like almost every idea you have. You come out with something and they're like, oh, this is amazing too. But the fact of the matter is they're already sold, and that's not the person. You do need to serve that existing kind of fan base, but there's so much more. And if you just focus on that one thing, the kind of retention element rather than acquisition, you'll be stuck in a cycle. So I just want to mention that's brilliant.
Right. Yeah. So they would come to me normally when they've vetted their product and they've had this initial traction, but they want to get to the next level. And that means going out into the world and reaching these cold audiences. And that takes good marketing, really strong marketing. And so here's what would happen. It would typically be some kind of a launch. We've been launching a coaching program, service, course, and I faced all this friction in that onboarding process. So you guys who have worked with clients know what this is like when you take them on for a consulting or copywriting project and you're like, oh man, they do not have anything in place. And so I found myself in this position where, especially with their messaging, because again, that's what I really specialized in, copywriting messaging. It's like, look, we need to create this campaign, this launch, and you don't have any of the basics in place when it comes to your messaging. And so typically it was very unorganized. I mean, there's like, how many find your ideal customer exercises there are out there. There's really no standard for it. So it's all over the place, and people typically gloss right over those anyways. So they're in terrible shape. So I find myself getting pulled back and doing all this foundational research, identifying their ideal customer, and then coming up with that core messaging. So that would set us back a lot. And it would also be a lot of scope creep for me too, because I thought we were just going to hit the ground running. I can bang out this copy for them, these emails, landing pages, and whatever. Suddenly I found myself doing all this extra work and starting to even resent the client for it, which is never any good. So I'm like, oh, come on, like this is supposed to be ready. And I see nodding heads here, right? And so there's this friction always I've found between, because look, it can be a very powerful combination. The business owner copywriter combination can be extremely powerful, right? It's like having the business owner salesperson conversation, but this is marketing. So salesmanship in print, right? It's mass broadcasts. But there needs to be a good handoff there. And often what happens is that the business owner is thinking, oh, well, they're the copywriter. They're supposed to do all this stuff for me. I make this argument that in many cases, the business owner needs to do more before bringing on the copywriter. You can't delegate your marketing. I'm sorry. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're a small business owner, there's no delegating marketing. You have to own it. You can delegate marketing activities. We'll talk about that more. Once you have your core messaging, or in my case, the 5 light bulbs in place, you can hand that off to a copywriter and say, hey, go write these emails, go post on Facebook. But the business owner, I'll get up on the soapbox and die there. The business owner needs to always be involved in that core messaging, because no one knows their product or their customer like them. So after a lot of experience doing this, a lot of frustration and all that, I said, okay, we need to streamline this process when I onboard these clients. And I tend to think in terms of frameworks. I'm a very meta thinker. And so I had this model that I was refining for the better part of a decade. And eventually, literally, it's funny, like the light bulb came on in my head and I had the bridge metaphor that Ryan uses and that a lot of marketers use. And you guys know this one, right? It's like, here's the problem state, here's the goal state. And I said, well, we need to fill in something in between. And so that's when the light bulbs like literally appeared on the page, and I drew them. I was using colored pencils and paper and I was drawing them. And so, yeah, that's when I came up with the 5 light bulbs, which is a a messaging framework, which there are not a ton of them out there. One of them is jobs to be done. That's one of them. Story brand is probably the most well-known. So that's what it is. It's a messaging framework that lets you create your core messaging, that clarifies your message, make sure that it's complete, and then you can spin that into any kind of marketing copy or content that you want.
I love that. And you guys summarized it in, such a clear manner. It's easy to gloss over the fact that the core messaging, just having that central place to go back to say, hey, here's how we're going to generate social. Here's how we're going to do our emails. Here's how we're going to, do our ad copy, and that kind of brand consistency, which you rarely see because, especially over the last, I want to say 10 years, the functions of marketing has been siloed where it's like, okay, we need the email team and you guys go do your thing. And here's the social team and here's the ad team. And they're all kind of independent of each other with no central message. And so that really, it actually just negates any kind of brand awareness that you could generate by having that consistency. So I think, just before you kind of describe the 5 light bulbs, it's important to just say, like, even having a framework is super unique to businesses because they typically don't. They have marketing functions. So I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I described, so I'll show this a bit later. Let's show the 5 light bulbs first, and then we'll zoom out and show how I put it into practice into a methodology that I use with clients. This is the same thing I teach in programs too. So yeah, do you want to dive into the light bulbs?
Yeah, definitely. Let's go through it.
Sounds good. And you want me to share my screen, Mark, or just do this verbally?
No, you can share your screen. We got video, but if you want to describe as much as possible, just in case people are just listening, that'd be great. Make sure you could share.
Yeah, people normally like if I can share. I'm a very visual thinker, and I think a lot of people are. So I created this whole world, this whole universe, kind of like the Marvel universe for this framework. Because, there's other ones out there like AIDA, right? Attention, interest, desire, action, but I can't see that. And I have a problem with that. So I found an amazing illustrator after going through a few of them that just didn't get my vision. And his name is Matt Strebe, and turned it into this. So here's the overview. Here's the 5 light bulbs. So light bulb 1, status quo. That's where the customer is, the problem area. And as you can see, it's dark and, they've been burned before. You can see the burned trees over there on that side. There's a lot of nuanced symbolism in this 5 light bulbs world here. And you have this bear who's in the thick of things, so looking for a solution. And so but you have to ask yourself, if you're the company or the entrepreneur, am I the only game in town? And the answer is no. There are other solutions for the customer to solve their problem. And it would be a mistake to not give voice to those other solutions. And I don't mean bash them and say, oh, well, they suck. No, I mean, make an honest argument, lay out the criteria, why or why not those other solutions might be right for them. And when you do that, yeah, you will actually lose some people, and that's good if those other solutions are the right solution for them. It should not be the case that you're the right solution 100% of the time. But if you put your message in front of the right person, your ideal customer, most of the time, you should be for them. And that brings us to light bulb 3, which is your approach. This ideally is your unique approach, but if you're just starting out and you don't have something that's super unique, a USP, then this can just be your approach. And again, you want to give voice to these light bulbs. You want to have the words on the page. So even just outlining your methodology or your pillars can go a long ways in getting buy-in from your customer. So that brings us to light bulb 4, which is your offer. Think about your offer as a vehicle for your approach. So it's like, hey, here's the path that I recommend and why it's tailored to you. But if you want help putting this into practice, if you want help implementing this to avoid all those missteps, and if it's something like a service or a course or coaching, you get these worksheets, you get these templates, you get these case studies and everything, then it's just an exchange of value. It's like, okay, well, here's the price for it. Is it worth it to you to get that kind of help? And hopefully in most cases, that's a yes. That's a resounding yes. And so that's the action step. That's when the bear starts to walk across the bridge. And assuming that they have success with the product, which we hope they do, they achieve their new life, which is light bulb number 5. And you want to give voice to that one as well. You want to paint a picture of a better tomorrow for the bear. That's one of those things, going back to a lot of experts being caught in the weeds, that experts just assume. So they just assume that the customer knows how this will benefit them. But remember, that customer is always asking, what's in it for me? And so you want to give voice to those things. So that is, this is often a much longer presentation, but that's the cool thing about the 5 light bulbs, is that you can explain it on the back of a napkin. or I've been exploring this for 3 or 4 years now. I'm still peeling back layers on it. So it's one of those things that's very simple, but also very deep.
I love that. Well, and I love how it kind of relates to a lot of stuff that we teach here at Digital Marketer, where we have the, customer avatar, we have the before and after, which is now part of the customer avatar canvas. But originally that was its own thing. It was like, hey, if you could just think about, what's going on with your customer before they have your product and what they can expect to be, after they have the product. It's and I think those simple frameworks are not just good for, actually executing the strategy, but also for explaining it to the client. Because I think, when you first get that initial meeting with a marketing client, they want to get directly into, well, here's why we're the best. We have this, components, and we are made of this, and our onboarding process amazing, and they get directly into features, which is Lightbulb 4, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I call it being stuck in the Lightbulb 4 silo, where all your messaging is just about the product and the features and me, I. We've been in business for 30 years. We won these awards. So one of the things that I hear from people when they see this is it's like revealing a hidden world that they didn't know existed. They say, oh man, now there's all these different things, these new things I can say. There are other light bulbs to turn on.
Well, and I love your process when you actually, go through each one, where you don't just do like, okay, because we call it the core message canvas, and it involves many steps before you actually get to writing down ideas for the core message. But I like how, during the boot camp where you kind of went through and just said, hey, let's just come up with ideas for this stage. And then you just started jotting them down. So could you kind of walk us through how, your ideation process is actually, execution, as far as I could understand?
Yeah, I'll share a graphic for that. Yeah, because like you said, it's the kind of thing that can be done on the back of a napkin. At the same time, my internal manual, or the canon for the Five Lightbulbs, is like 200 pages long. So, and I say that because this is very useful for using it with clients, because there are new products you can offer, new services that you can offer. So let me show you this high-level diagram, which you guys probably haven't seen yet. So this is zooming out. Give me a thumbs up if you can see that. Okay, cool. So again, one of these things that very simple, but very powerful. So we start with gathering customer insights and also product insights as well. It's really two-sided. So customer research, learning about them. Who is our ideal customer? And then also facts about the product as well. That's one thing that if you study the old copywriters like I have, you see that they were all about just surfacing fact after fact after fact, which is not a word commonly associated with marketing these days. It tends to be more hype and promise and not so much fact and evidence. But the top copywriters were not like that. They were very much about facts and evidence. So that's what we want to surface. So we surface all this raw material, and then it goes into what we call a messaging map. And what does a map do? It gives you direction. And so this is where we organize the 5 light bulbs. So we typically do this in something like a Kanban, a Trello board. We use Notion with clients and in our programs. And so we do a column for each of the light bulbs. And I have a big list of questions that I ask for each of them. Because you need to stand out these days, and you need to hit things from different angles. You need unique messaging. There's a lot of people out there. Most companies are making the same core promises. So it's like, well, how do you stand out? You got to say it differently. So when we ask this list of questions from all these different angles, we always surface new, rich, unique messaging. And then what we do from there, so this was the missing piece. This thing in the middle here was the missing piece. So you can imagine going into a launch like I was doing with a lot of these clients, these product launches, without this. And it's like everything is just all over the place. It's just totally random. We don't have this organized. Now what we do is we create this messaging map. And so imagine going into a launch where things are moving really fast. You have multiple people involved, team members, contractors, but you can all gather around the centralized core persuasive message. That makes sense so far?
Oh, fantastically.
Yeah. So then again, the map gives direction. So then we can use this to create all of our assets. And there's a lot of benefits to this. So first, they get this new business asset. So we build this inside their business, this Kanban. So they have that, and clients like something very tangible. And then what happens is that they have consistency across all these different marketing assets. And that is so important. Again, these days, it's hard enough to have someone see your message and click on it, but if you have a different message every time, I mean, you only have a split second to get someone's attention. So how many opportunities do you have to get in front of them? And so when you're getting in front of them, it has to be a consistent message. Otherwise, they're just going to be confused. So this gets them aligned on their messaging so that everything is consistent, no matter where they're seeing it, whether it's a landing page, a Facebook ad, email, etc. It's also a great team builder for them if they have a team. I mean, I love these calls because I hop on with them and their team just starts, they just dive right into it. And one person's like, oh, this is our light bulb one. And then the other person's like, no, this is the light bulb one. Or I heard this great light bulb 2 quote the other day. So on that point, it's really become a common language for clients as well. And I first experienced this with you guys, Mark, with Matt Swan and Ryan Dice, when I was consulting with them on one of the scalable launches. And I heard Matt say that to Ryan. Matt said, hey, Ryan, I need a good light bulb 3 story. And Ryan was like, oh, man, Matt, that's a great light bulb 2 email. And so I saw how it just made that process more efficient. And it might seem like a minor thing, but like you guys are super busy and anything that saves time is beneficial. So the common language around the 5 light bulbs, light bulb 2 ad, light bulb 3 email has been a huge benefit.
It's huge. Well, and I think, the thing I love about this is that it's very understandable for the client, and really the way you kind of jot down the ideas as you're going through this process is super impressive, because I think nothing kind of impresses clients more than when you execute marketing during a meeting. And I think this framework allows you to do that really easily.
Absolutely. Yeah. So those are some benefits that the client gets. And of course and at least to higher conversions as well. I mean, the way that this thing is designed, I based it off of, I always talk about studying these old copywriters. The number one person I studied was Eugene Schwartz in his book, Breakthrough Advertising. And he has this concept called belief building. And the idea is that you ask the question, what does my client need to believe in order to buy? And you filter your marketing through that lens, that filter, and it surfaces the language that you need to nudge them towards the sale. And so it's designed in such a way that when you don't really have to ask yourself that question, you can with this, but just by filling in these 5 light bulbs, it naturally does that. And so it's essentially a sophisticated form of objection handling. So when they use this, they don't have to go read Breakthrough Advertising, which is really dense and costs like $500 for that book. You can just use the 5 light bulbs and it does it for you.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And and if they want to go deeper, they can, but typically they don't, right? I mean, once you're like, hey, here's an awesome thing and it delivers the results, then I don't care anymore. You could do what you want. Is that your experience?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, the people on this call care, right? Because if you're
yes,
the copywriting nerds on here like this stuff. And so I typically go deeper into it. Like when I presented to M3, I went a little bit deeper into it with them because they're marketing copywriting nerds. But yeah, the client just wants the result at the end of the day.
Yes. Yeah. And then there you go. And you get the win. And now they have a consistent process and they can generate as many assets as they want using the same message. So you get that cohesiveness. I love it. But that is a good segue into everybody else's questions, because I think I've hogged enough time. If you guys want to, you could come up here and ask, or just put your question in the Q&A tool, or just a chat. Either way, this is supposed to be a talk. That's why we call it Agencies Talk versus Agencies Present, or Billy Presents, or any of those fun things. So what's some questions? If not, I'm going to keep on asking questions. I'm going to keep on asking questions that you guys ask your questions however you want. Billy, for me, like I'm a big, content marketer, love content marketing. I think it's, the future now more than ever, thanks to AI. How do you think you could apply this kind of core messaging to, say, a 90-day content campaign that's going to involve, videos, articles, podcasts? Is it possible to create kind of a cohesive core message for something like that?
Yeah, totally. So one of the nice things about this is, so think about that messaging map in 2 phases. There's the surfacing phase, and you might think about this going back to the bear. So imagine that the bear has a shovel in his hand, and he's digging for gold. So he's shoveling around looking for gold. That's the idea behind asking these questions and surfacing all these insights about your customer. But those gold nuggets on their own these days don't have a lot of practical value, right? Like you don't see people walking around with these gold nuggets in their pockets. So what do you have to do? You have to translate that into something practical. So we translate those gold nuggets into watches and necklaces and jewelry and things, right? Things that have practical value. So with our messaging, with our marketing, what we're doing is we're taking the answers to these questions that we ask, and again, I have a huge list of them, and then we turn that into content. So the answers to those questions alone are not valuable. It's the headlines that matter. It's the Facebook ads that matter. It's the YouTube videos that matter. So we also have, like, now I've seen there's tons of different prompts and templates that we offer our clients, use for our clients, just go-to things that we can use to spray out there when we're doing these marketing campaigns. And one, it's going to be, again, persuasive because of the structure of the 5 light bulbs, and 2, everything's going to be aligned. You know, I describe that messaging map as kind of like a brand manual, but instead of your fonts and logos and colors and all that, it contains your persuasive messaging. And I don't know why we have brand manuals and those are so popular, but we don't have the same thing for persuasive messaging, which I would argue is more important for small businesses. So that's one of the things I'm trying to do with the 5 light bulbs, is create that brand manual for your persuasive communication.
I love that. That is a fantastic concept. And I think, the more of us that are kind of getting into this kind of full stack marketing approach where, you're really just hired as a strategist, and people expect, strategy is not execution. And I think that's an important distinction that a lot of people don't see, because they could get, like the brand, visuals that everybody understand. Okay, we only use these colors, we'll use these fonts. Here's how the structure of images go, and blah, 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 and then completely negate the fact that the voice is off, or there is no core message, or all these essential, written, we say written, but really that the copywriting goes into everything, because your writing will go into your, ad videos, your commercials, all of your content, and even your podcast if you do it right. So I think, that kind of brand manual or brand copy manual, whatever you want to call it, is actually way more useful, because once you get the visual components down, they're kind of set. Like, here's our colors, here's our logos, and here's our whatever. So in that brand manual, let's say, what would you say would be the big pillars that will drive all use of those concepts throughout the marketing strategy?
Yeah, and this is the main product that I sell now. So I don't do a whole lot of copywriting these days. Typically, it's the team that does the copywriting. And so the main product I sell now is a productized service. It's the messaging map. So I sell the messaging map for a darn good price, and that creates that core messaging. And then we say, okay, well, now we can use this, and now it can be either me. In some cases, I do the copywriting. I take it from there, or it's the team member. And going back to this graphic too. Yeah. So one of the things that has been really nice about this, I mean, in addition to faster onboarding with these clients, we can launch these campaigns quicker. We don't have to push them down the road like we always did, because I had to go back in and do all this other work. We have a common language to speak about it. We can say things like, oh, we need a Lightbulb 5 email. We can crank out this content faster. From a business perspective, for me, it's also led to a bunch of different product opportunities. And that's because of the way that it's structured. So again, I sell the messaging map, but I have also done engagements where we just focus on one of the light bulbs. I have done small group workshops, a Lightbulb 3 workshop, where I take people through just fleshing out their Lightbulb 3. And if you think about here, can you see me highlighting here, drawing this box?
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, this is where most people live. Like, this is most of the advice that you see. It's all tactical advice. It's like, or tactical advice or platform advice. It's like, hey, here's how to use hashtags, right? That's tactical advice, and you use those on these platforms. Or, hey, here's some YouTube advice or email marketing advice. Now, I can do that stuff, but I've taken a step back here. So I'm upstream. So first, you need me before you need these things. And then also the cool thing that's happened is that I'm able to partner with people who specialize in this stuff. So I have a cohort I'm running with a very successful YouTube ad agency next month. And so it's YouTube ads. So it's the 5 light bulbs for YouTube ads. So I focus on the creative, and they bring the platform specific advice, and we're promoting it to their audience, which is a huge audience. Like I said, I've run Lightbulb 3 workshops before. I also get referral commissions too from these partners. We did one of my clients, we did a $30,000 website redesign where I did the copy, and then this partner did the design. And I got a nice commission for that. So now I can form partnerships with all these people who are on the downstream side of things, which is where most people are. There's not a lot of people who are upstream like me. So it's really become a win-win-win, a win for me, a win for the client, and a win for these partners as well.
I love that. Well, and as a a marketer that had an agency before, if I was presented with that information when they say want to make a website, because I did a lot of website development, I could have done so much better and so much faster, and could have skipped a whole bunch of the content ideation process that usually swamps. Well, it takes a ton of time, takes a million years, because you kind of have to train the client what the heck you want and why, versus just getting to the execution part, which when you hire technicians to execute a part of a marketing plan, they just want to execute. They don't want to talk to you. They just like, hey, you hired me for this specific function. Now you can be quiet so I could work and get this done for you. But if they don't have the core messaging that you're talking about, it's impossible, because then you get back into strategy, and you might get to product development. It could go back that far where somebody hasn't even defined what they sell very well. And so now you're not just a website designer. Now you're a CMO temporarily, because this company doesn't have those components. So I love everything about that. And I'm sure, the people, the vendors that actually execute your messaging love it as well. And actually, Tony has a question. So is this messaging map for a specific strategy, i.e. Facebook marketing?
No, it's platform agnostic.
Mm.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about it, is that it's platform agnostic and it's medium agnostic. So it works for written text, it works for video, it works for audio. You can use this for a podcast, and it can work across any type of channel. Where that would come into play, the channel, Facebook, would be on that downstream side of things. And you can do that too. So if you're a Facebook expert, then you could use it for that. Or I would partner with a Facebook expert to do that. Kind of like that YouTube partnership that I talked about. Same thing. Yeah. And you're right, Mark. Yeah. Who's the copywriter on this call? Raise your hand if you're a copywriter. Like, imagine a client came to you.
Axel, Melina.
Yeah. So imagine a client came to you and they had their messaging map, their Five Lightbulbs messaging map completely fleshed out. And that thing was just rocking. How much easier would your job be, where you can just take that and spin that into finished copy? So that's one of the things I've realized. Like, you give it to them on a silver platter, and these contractors just love you for it. And that's one of the things I'm trying to do, is to take myself out of it and bring these two groups together, the business owners and then the people who can actually implement on this work.
Love it. Yeah. And that's,
I got a question, kind of follow up on what I asked. If it's okay, because I'm just trying to kind of understand how it flows. Because I took Mark, I took the AI empowered boot camp. We were able to put together that whole framework and everything, and we've been implementing that quite a bit. I've actually productized it, but one of the things that we're running into, because of a whole AI thing, is still so new. They're getting a lot. We're getting a lot of these business owners that they're asking, "Oh, how can AI help me?" And then when you sit down and start talking to them about what their struggles are, it's like, okay, let's forget about AI. It's like, yeah, your messaging is just, you don't even have any messaging going on, right? You don't even know who your target audience is, the fundamentals, right? And we're targeting mostly home services, just because that's my niche. And so I'm just trying to understand the light bulbs. Is that, and again, this is just me from not just kind of like trying to understand how it all kind of comes together with what we're doing. Does the Five Lightbulbs strategy, that messaging mapping, is that basically trying to get even deeper into the messaging for the customer, for the business owner? Is that just so that way you kind of, obviously, this is one of my biggest things, is that, especially with home service providers, if you go look at 10 different home service providers on Facebook, they all literally have the same type of messaging, right? None of them get deeper into the psychology of what the homeowner's thinking, right? And so is this what this is for?
Yes. So a couple ideas there. So one, and yeah, everyone's saying the same thing. And so one thing that I realized is that a lot of the advice to help you fix that problem tends to focus on, the advice is like, well, you got to have this one flashy thing that sets you apart. What I realized, learning the hard way, is that it's more like a fingerprint, where you might have a little piece to your fingerprint that's the same. Like mine and Mark's might have like a ridge that's the same, or a swirl that's the same. but when you take the fingerprint as a whole, it's totally unique. And so the cool thing about the Five light bulbs is like, yeah, you might have the same light bulb 5 as someone else. You said you're in home services, so you might have the same promise you're making as someone else, but little to no chance that when you fill out the five light bulbs, all of them, that's going to be the exact same as someone else. So you can think about that messaging map that I showed, like a fingerprint. So that's one thing about standing out. And then what you're referring to also was, yeah, how do you meet them where they are? Like if they don't know what solution is right for them, or they don't really care. Yeah, you're right. So I have a process that I go through where we think about, okay, well, are they problem aware or solution aware? And so if they're only aware that they have a problem, I'm going to customize the messaging to that before bringing them into any potential solutions.
Love that. Well, and actually just for, how I kind of have used the Five light bulbs since I learned about them was, for individual companies, if you think in terms of the brand, okay, the brand has a bridge for the problem and solution, and then you have campaigns. And so I think for me, the core messaging within campaigns is super useful because you're going to have multiple campaigns. When you're selling clients, you might not, a lot of them don't, hire you for marketing, which covers every element of marketing. They'll hire you to execute a objective. Okay, we got Black Friday coming up. What are we going to do for Black Friday? So really, I think if you could say, hey, you need a brand approach, a brand message, and then you also need a campaign message, or multiple campaign messages. And when you get into campaign messages, it actually makes the sales process easier because you're not saying, hey, we need to redevelop your whole brand and define your customer for the whole brand and all the big brand stuff. You could just say, hey, we're just going to test a campaign. And if this campaign goes well, then we could get into, me helping you with all the bigger strategic thinking. But right now, let's go ahead and serve you for what you need right now. And then you could do the core message just for that campaign, which I think just makes it a little easier. But Billy, if that's totally wrong, tell me.
That's totally right. No, and actually that brings up something I didn't even mention, which is the reusability of these messaging maps. Because what we do, you're right, we have that overarching message, but if it's a specific campaign, or if we're targeting a very specific customer avatar, what we'll do is just copy and paste that thing, change 10% of it. Most of the messaging stays the same, and we're off to the races very quickly. So we'll have multiple messaging maps for a client for sure.
Yeah. Well, and then you could, get that sale, get in the door. Because I think that, we always talk about providing value first, and it's hard to provide value first, even if somebody really needs the brand stuff, which most companies do. They don't realize it, but that's what they need. But just to get in there and say, hey, because when you try to sell people like, hey guys, I looked at your company, I looked at what you're currently doing, and it's all crap. Like you have nothing going on. You're lucky you're in business. So, and nobody wants to hear that. They're like, well, we've been around for so long and blah, blah, blah. But if you go with the campaign route, I think it's a much easier door to get in.
Yeah, you want to think about, again, I like studying, I love studying history, and the Greeks had this term called telos or teleology. If anyone knows that term, it's like, what's the end purpose? What's the end use here, right? Like the purpose of this glass, I can give a scientific description of this thing and just say what it is. Like it's, it's quartz and it's etched and it's this diameter, but it's to refresh my palate, right? That's the end use of this glass. That's why this thing exists. So it's like, why are we doing this? Why does this messaging map exist? And we like to tailor that to an end outcome, something like a product launch or building an evergreen sales funnel, or I work with a lot of experts, and they write books, so they're about to do the book tour, right? And so I'll quiz. That's a whole other thing that I sell too, is I'll mock interview them on their 5 light bulbs. So when they go on these podcast interviews, they have the light bulbs ready to go and they just rock it.
Oh, that's genius. I didn't even think about that application. That's perfect. Yeah. Cause you have, individual interviews that you could provide, go through this, because again, a lot of us just default to features, right? We just go into, well, I'm selling this because I came up with this and it's so great and blah, 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 versus like, hey, no, I just identified that the people I'm trying to help are having this really big issue and they're really unhappy. And I realized that I had already helped 50 people get to this point. And when they got to this point, they were so happy and they could accomplish everything they wanted. And now, even with that kind of default statement, I didn't say anything about what I actually did. So I just went directly from light bulb 1 to light bulb 5, and I got you there. And now based on the audience, I could say like, and here's how I did it. And then I could get into the offer or whatever it is. But I love that. That's another use. I'm going to write that down. Use 5 light bulbs to prepare for interviews.
And I see that there was a question from, that's
Nope.
a great use of it, that application, prepping. And you can see them, I guess a meme because I make them squirm when I'm drilling them on these light bulbs. But hey, better with me, right, in private than on that huge podcast with 1 million listeners. And it's so interesting how many experts don't have that dialed in when they go on those interviews. So yeah, they don't mind the tough love. But I see a question from Ming here. How long does it typically take to have a clear messaging map? Again, it's one of those things you can do it quickly. So my typical product is a VIP day, and I'll sell these for
love those
thousands of dollars, and we'll go through and we'll bang it out together. Typically because I noticed like a lot of, and I respect this too, like a lot of consultants and copywriters like really want to dig in and do that deep work, and it takes time and everything. But you have to balance that with the practical aspect of business where things are moving fast and we need this campaign tomorrow. So let's get something good enough done. So you have to find that middle ground. So yeah, I typically do this in a VIP day. We spend all day together in person, and then we'll launch a campaign from there. But then we'll typically go back and you get feedback from that, right? There's a feedback loop. So you do that campaign, you get all this feedback, you test things, you get quotes. We'll go back and plug those quotes into the messaging map. So it's a living, breathing document. It's never finished. And if you keep it at the front of your attention, look at it every morning is what I say. It will be a lean, mean marketing machine over time.
I love it. Well, I love the concept of the VIP day too, because, a lot of times, you could set this meeting and be like, we're going to meet for 1 hour every week. And then you get like 3 months in and you actually haven't produced anything because you were just discussing the basics for every single meeting. So I like the VIP because you could just be like, hey, you know what? You have a ton of questions. I think we could really help you. Like, let's just sit down for 4 or 8 hours, whatever it is, and knock it all out. And then you could do your presentation. And then it really gives you, some motivation to learn the 5 light bulbs so well that you could deliver it in person live and make thousands of dollars in a day. Like, I think that, that's my dream. It's like, hey, I only work on Saturdays and the rest of the time I hang out. That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, we have a baby. So we have a 10-month-old son, so I don't want to go far from home. So I just had a client fly in from New York to do it here in San Diego, and that's like,
wow,
go spend the day downtown together, go home and play with my son. So yeah,
I love that. Well, actually, I don't know if that answers your question, Michelle, but that's the VIP days. I think those are genius. If you could swing that, and a lot of companies will be interested when you say that, because they've had this experience with outside consultants or services where it's like, oh, we worked for them for 6 months and we didn't actually get anything out of it. You can say like, you know what? I know that happens, and I avoid it by doing a really heavy day, and we just come in, we bust out all this stuff. I could show you, here's what my past clients have ended up with, show them the result, and then they'll be like, oh my gosh, I could have that next weekend. You'll be like, yes, that'll be $20,000. They'll be like, yay, and you'll be yay. And then whatever happens after that is like gravy, because you already made the money up front, which is how I used to run my agency, where I was like, hey, I don't know how long it's going to take to make this website because you are going to hold it up, so you're going to have to pay up front. That's how it is. Now, I did have clients. I still have clients coming back to me from like 6 years ago. Like, I'm ready to finish my website. I'm like, check that clause on the contract. That was 12 months.
Yeah,
exactly. I still help them if I can.
Well, and you'll find that the more successful client, you can kind of have your cake and eat it too, because the more successful clients prefer like a one-off day versus a 6-month contract, because they're moving fast. They don't have time. They don't want to see you every single week. So they want to get in and out. So you get better clients that way too. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the VIP day.
Well, and they're excited right now, which is the important part, because if they're excited right now, then you could be like, oh yeah, let's bust it out. Here's you go. And they'll be happy. And, then you make some money and finish. Axel, what do you got?
Especially when we're working with high potentials, they really like this one day idea, because a week later, usually they already find some reasons to complain. So the harder the impression is, the fresher the impression is, the more they are able and willing to pay you. The longer you wait, the longer you proceed this kind of structure and procedure, the more mistakes they find in the system, the more they tend to complain.
Yeah. Or they have that regret, right? The buyer's remorse, where they're like, oh, well, is this worth $10,000? Is this blah blah? And you don't want them to get to that point, because when they start questioning that, or maybe somebody else from their team comes in and they get in their head and they're like, well, we could have done this internally, and I don't know why we're listening to blah 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 blah. It's like, no, get them something valuable, get them some results as fast as possible, and then you'll set yourself up for a long-term contract if that's something you want to do. With that said, Billy, where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, thanks, Gain. This has been fun chatting with you. Good to see familiar faces and your new faces too. Yeah, as you can see, I'm really passionate about this. Like, I want everyone to be speaking the language of the light bulbs, whether I work with them or not, or whether they know who I am or not. At the same time, like I said, I'm trying to pull myself out of this and make this process more efficient between business owners and entrepreneurs. So I'm growing a team of licensed partners. And if some of you are interested in that, please email me. I think Mark also has a link. If you don't have that, Mark, you can type it in. We've got a couple now, but I'm looking for people who want to sell VIP days and implement the 5 light bulbs for clients, because there's just no way. There's so many industries, verticals out there, different types of products, web design, copywriting, consulting. I can't serve them all. And so I'm looking for people who I can train, give out my templates to, my big manual to. We have the 5 light bulbs trademarked, so it's protected. And yeah, I want to grow a crew. So if you're interested in that, please reach out. We're very small right now. It's not like Digital Marketers program at all, but we're coming.
That's awesome. Well, and then that's so cool that you're open to partnering with people like that, because it's it's easy to be greedy and be like, I could help everybody and blah blah blah. So no, I love that you're part of the community. Thank you so much for being one of our new faculty members, our official faculty. We actually haven't announced that super publicly yet, but we're partnering with people like Billy, who are kind of specialists within their niche, in order to help us provide more consistent content that is vetted and totally works, because, like Billy mentioned, we actually have hired Billy at Scalable in order to help us execute our program. So you're literally seeing us use his stuff. So if you like DM stuff, if you like Scalable stuff, it's Billy. Billy's doing all of it, and he's awesome. So check him out.
Thanks, guys. See you around.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. Tune in next week. Who do we have next week? Do you know, Cameron?
Yes, we have Ben Albert.
Ben Albert. All right. That's another good one. If you like content, like podcasting, tune in next week, because we'll be talking about all that kind of stuff. Have a good weekend, now.